Ben Sztejka
Yeah,
of your Amazon accounting expert. Welcome
yeah,
to our live and welcome to the podcast.
yeah. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Pleasure. So, yeah, tax, everyone's favorite subject, particularly if you're UK based, if you've just done your self assessment for 31st of January 2021 each year, or each year, I should say, not just this year. Is obviously the date where we've got to pay the money that we owe the tax man, which is a painful day. But if you think that's bad, you should be in Ben's shoes because he's just finished being on the other side of that, completing all his
Yeah,
self-assessment forms.
yeah. Imagine doing 100 really urgent, late
Yeah,
self-assessments and piling
yeah,
through those. But I've come out the other side and I'm
yeah.
still jaded.
Yeah, amazing. So, folks, we are going to be talking about VAT specifically today. If for people who sell in the UK, whether you be UK based yourself or American, EU, whatever. So that's going to affect a lot of people. So if that's you, listen up. If it isn't you, you may learn a thing or two about VAT anyway. If you sell in Europe, if you sell in America, and you're never planning to sell in Europe, then you can go and make that coffee and relax. I say coffee because it'll be more than your time, and don't bother watching this because you won't get much out of it. But for the rest of us, VAT is a massive thing we've got to deal with. And a lot of us are dealing with it. It turns out very inelegantly, to put it politely. So if you have any questions, if you're on the live or points you want to make, just pop them in the chats on the various channels. One on YouTube, a couple of places on Facebook, and LinkedIn and Twitter. So if you've got any comments on any of those areas, I can see them by the magic of technology here, and we can weave it into the show if you've got any intelligent questions. Otherwise, we will. I mean, obviously, if they're dumb questions, we won't weave them into the show. So try and ask intelligent questions, folks. But if you think it's something you need to answer, joking apart, ask the question. Like, I mean, really, when it comes to tax, a lot of things that Ben thinks is normal, I or you may think is, a dumb question that needs to be asked. So, other than that, we're going to just record a podcast as is our want. So, Ben, are you ready to rock and roll with our podcast recording?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Are you ready to pledge your life to Jesus now? I shouldn't say that because I'll offend lots of
you're
people out there.
alienated someone there.
Alienated someone already. For those of you who are still watching, here we go with our podcast recording. Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, welcome back to the 10K Collective podcast, the place to be for 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon sellers, a subset of the amazing FBA podcast family. Today, we're going to talk about tax, which is not probably the best opening, but the truth is this: if you are VAT registered, and pretty much any significant size business is going to be certainly 6 figures and up, then you need to deal with this stuff. And the truth is, if you're dealing with your tax wrong, you're either risking your business, prosecution yourself, or something bad. And if you get it right, you could save yourself a lot of time and hassle. We're talking today to Ben Sztejka, who's an expert in this area. He's chosen to specialize in VAT for Amazon and marketplace e-commerce sellers, a very much needed topic, I think. So, Ben, thank you first of all for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Pleasure. So, tell us in sort of a very short time who you are and your company, your business.
So I'm obviously Ben Sztejka, and I'm a chartered accountant, and owner of Your E-commerce Accountant. We focus just on e-commerce sellers who are selling on Amazon, Etsy, eBay, and Shopify. So we've specialized in making sure we know everything about those marketplaces, the taxes which affect them, and it kind of suits my background as well because I used to be a seller.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, I think that as the market for services like yourselves matures, then it's smart to get more and more niche because there is quite a big difference, isn't there, between the tax situation of somebody who's selling on the marketplace and somebody who's just got their own direct to consumer site, as I understand it.
Oh yeah, miles away, because now the new rules in Europe means that actually Amazon does a lot of the heavy lifting, whereas direct to consumer they've got to do that themselves.
Yeah, so it's for once a win for the Amazon sellers. I mean, it does feel sometimes like Amazon beats us up, and we can't do lots of sexy social media marketing in with the same ease that a direct to consumer site seller has. So we got our nose pressed to the glass there, but the truth is, on the Amazon side at least, the tax is less painful. So let's get into this then. So VAT for Amazon sellers and Shopify, eBay sellers, other marketplace sellers.
Yeah.
What is it we're talking about exactly? Let's define the terms of our discussion. Is it VAT? Is that going to apply to everyone who ever sells on any of these marketplaces ever? There's a particular
Yeah.
person it applies.
So it really applies to businesses who sell in the UK and they sell on those marketplaces, so like eBay, Etsy, Amazon. So all if you're selling into the UK, you have to be either part of the VAT regime in the UK, or or I kind of have to register in Europe elsewhere if you're selling in Europe.
Okay, so that's a begs a few questions. We'll dig into that later, but so what are the classic errors you see people making in this space? That's probably the best starting point for me,
Yeah.
and then obviously we'll give you some of the answers, folks, if you're listening, for how you can avoid these errors. But let's get into it first. You just said something about, okay, I'm selling in the UK, need to be VAT registered. So that means, okay, I'm sitting in the UK. Do I start an Amazon business? Do I just register my company for VAT straight away from the get-go?
Well, that's it. So if you're in the UK and you're a UK business, you've got £85,000 threshold before you have to register for VAT. So it's 85,000 in turnover revenue. So it's actually not that bigger threshold, especially for e-com sellers. But what we find is that 20 to 30% of people, when they create their limited company, which is actually super easy in the UK, anyone can do it. I don't know if you've done it before, Michael, but
Yes, it's incredibly quick and easy.
yeah,
It's not £13 or about $20.
yeah,
Not the
and it's just a
Americans can do
form,
this. Yeah, super
super
easy.
easy.
Yeah. And by the way,
And
there's very little regulation of that. Somebody recently tested this out by somebody from the Financial Times, or somebody registered a company called Angels or Heaven, and they put their occupation as creator and their address as Heaven, and they got it registered. So there is very little oversight on company registration. It's very quick and easy.
they'll
And yeah,
yeah, they'll have a very difficult delivery for the postman for those letters, but I
they
know
will do. Yeah. Apart
there
from
is a
that,
club
though,
in
yeah.
London called Heaven. I do know that.
Okay, that's true. But joking apart, it is very easy and quick to register a company, and because of that, people don't tend to use lawyers and they DIY, right? And it sounds like they're
That's
making a
it.
great mistake. So, if I understand, let me just make sure we get this message out super clear for anyone who's not got it yet. If you haven't hit the £85,000 a year in turnover, aka revenue, aka sales, then you
Yeah,
don't need to be VAT registered
yeah,
if you're a
exactly.
UK company. Okay. Now, little follow up to that then. If you are not a UK resident, like one of my mums, not a UK resident, is resident in the EU, but he has a UK limited company, what's the situation for that person?
So if they're outside the UK but they have a UK limited company,
That's right. So the owner
yeah,
slash the shareholder and director or directors of the business are
he's in
not
that,
based
yeah,
in the UK, but the
yeah.
UK limited company has. What's the situation with them?
So they've got the same threshold as it, because it's the entity, the legal entity is still a UK entity, so you still have that threshold. The difference is when you're an overseas seller of a, let's say, an LLC or a European entity selling into the UK, you then need to register for VAT from the offset.
Okay. So what if one of the questions that comes up, we're plunging into it here. Um, if you are US based seller,
Mm.
then one of the things you is often the case. Well, I know the other way around better. If you're a UK based seller, it's often wise to use a UK company because it's simple and quick and cheap to set up compared to a lot of companies in the US, depending which state you register in, etc., etc. Is the same true for US sellers who want to sell into UK? Is it going to be a good idea for them to register a UK company in order to, to start off their sales without having to register for VAT first? Is that possible? Does that work that way?
Yeah, that is something they should definitely look at, depending on the volume they're going to put through. If they think, actually, I'm going to be an LLC and I know I'm going to sell £100,000 worth of stuff in the first year, there's no point creating another entity. But if they want to test out that market, it might be worth making a UK limited company and then starting selling on Amazon in the UK off that platform. So then they can not have to register VAT if they don't need to.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a super smart thing to do, I think, to find a legitimate and allowed and safe, by the way, I've just got to say all those words, way to test the market before you commit to it. Because, I mean, £85,000 isn't a lot of money. So what, just over 100,000, whatever it is, $110,000, I guess, at the moment. But, it's a good way to start. You could air freight some stuff over from your existing stock and see if it sells, right? So that strikes me a very smart idea. So hopefully, if you're a US-based seller, you've already got your value out of today's episode. What about if you've got an EU-based seller? I mean, I suppose I'm implied by the fact that one of the members of the mastermind is doing this. Would it
Mhm.
also make sense for an EU-based seller to register a UK company, or is there some kind of post-Brexit complication with that?
No, so it's the same concept as the US entity going to the UK. We're a third party country now, and actually they can register as a UK limited company as well, and still have that threshold. But if they're a French company, like a SAS company selling into the UK, they'll have to register for VAT again off the bat.
So it sounds like the ownership structure could end up being something like you've got a parent company. Maybe let's take the example of an American, just because a lot of our listeners are Americans, but and they have an LLC, or there's a whole alphabet soup of legal entities in America. But let's say they have an LLC or an S corp or whatever the heck else it exists out there in one of the 50 states with all their varieties of, is it Delaware Corporation or whatever it is, and they could then, I suppose, own a UK limited company, which then does not have to register for VAT until it hits that £85,000 or whatever it is, $110,000, right? Okay, so that sounds to me, knowing as I do from experience, and as you were saying, how quick and easy it is to register a UK company. From my experience as a UK citizen, that feels like an easy way to go. Is it that easy? I mean, I know you're not a company law expert, but I know accountants end up getting involved with this as the sort of easier way to do it than go to a lawyer.
It
in your experience, would that be practical?
It is really easy. I mean, look, you need to make sure you've got like a UK registered office, and your details will be online, but it is a super easy system to go through. It's a super easy form. And the key thing really is what we see people going wrong, is where we started off, is that someone will, a UK seller, because it's so easy, you'll get to the end of this form and you think, yeah, I've smashed it. And then it just goes, do you want to register for VAT? And you're like, yes. And that's when they get them. And then you've lost your 85k threshold because you've already registered for VAT.
Yes, so I suppose the British system allows you to be, it's not idiot proof. You don't have to hire an attorney who knows what things to tick and what who doesn't. But on the other hand, if it will allow you to be an idiot and say, yes, I want you to take my money when I don't need you to take my money. So I guess you just need to have somebody go through it with you who knows their stuff. So this is slightly dodgy ground. I'm going to go there anyway, and feel free to duck the issue. Let me put it this way: you're not a lawyer, but if somebody approached you as an accountant who's obviously is a tax specialist, would you be? Is that the sort of thing you, or indeed somebody's intelligent accountant who knows about this stuff, could guide somebody to do? So it's probably cheaper and easier than a lawyer. Would that be a reasonable use of an accountant, 100%. Or is that not a good use?
Yeah, so we I think the accountancy industry, we're responsible for 90% of the companies out there. Getting a lawyer to do it would be a very costly way. You get a lawyer when you want to do a very kind of difficult legal structure with loads of entities dotted about, but an accountant can really help you out and just kind of take you through it. And I think HMRC assumes you've got an accountant. That's why they make it super easy to make own goals.
Yes, that makes sense. So this is a seriously important point to make for anyone who's not UK based, or in fact anyone who's UK based but hasn't been through this sort of process before, which is a couple of points, which is number one, DIY company formation is such a piece of cake in this country. US is a nightmare. Germany, of course, they like to make everything bureaucratic. Most of Europe is a somewhat more bureaucratic than the UK, which Brexiteers have been crowing about. That doesn't necessarily mean Brexit was the answer, but that's a different issue. But it's true that in this country we do have a nice straightforward system. The second point, you don't need to get lawyers involved in this country, and that'll be a relief if you're an American or a German, because they generally seem to. Other European countries I'm less familiar with. The third point is you should, however, and this is the missing piece, get a friendly accountant. And that's exactly how I did it. At first, I've formed a few companies in my time, of course, now I'm, I suppose seasoned or foolish, whichever way you want to put it. And the first time I did it, I got an accountant involved, and they used a company that did it kind of on her behalf, but she was able to guide me through it, like, don't tick this box, which was, given my accountant charges me £100 an hour rather than a company formations expert lawyer would probably be 3-4 times that much, and was working with me already, so I didn't have to explain the whole company because she understood me and my accounting, my business overall. That worked really well. So that would be my hint, is like, don't go to the lawyers, don't DIY, get a friendly accountant. The other thing, of course, I would say is pretty obvious, but I'm going to say it because people don't do that as well. Don't use a US accountant to form a UK company. They don't know what they're doing. Just as I wouldn't hire Ben, no offense, to do my sales tax returns in America. You need a specialist. But once they're a specialist, it's very easy. So hopefully, I think we've already saved a lot of people an awful lot of money and hassle already. So what are the other areas? And so don't tick the box at the end.
Yeah, that's
Don't, come steaming in as an LLC and register for VAT if you don't need to, or the same for, French or other European entities. What are the other errors that you see people making when they're registering for VAT?
yeah. I think the other one which we see an awful lot really, and it seems like an obvious one, but they register on the wrong date sometimes. So you might say, I've hit the VAT threshold in June 22, and I created the company in January 21, and they're like, oh, I've registered for VAT. I best do it from January 21. That's when I created my company. But actually, what you've done there is just registered from the start. So basically, you've done exactly what I said you did on the first one, which was you now have to pay VAT from the start. This time, though, you've made the sales and you have to go back and then apply 20% to those old sales. And you basically, if you had a profit margin, it might be gone.
Yes. So this is again why having an expert in your corner is super, super helpful, because with a few strokes of a mouse, you could get yourself into trouble that you don't need to, or not. And yet, of course, they don't need to be heavy-handed major, lawyer. Unlike in America, where the lawyers seem to kind of have a bit of a good thing going, right? It's money for old rope. You jump through the hoops and pay $7,600, and all you get at the end of it is a company. Whereas you guys are much more tax efficient, I guess. So tell me about the other areas then. What about OA and RA guys? Online arbitrage, retail arbitrage. It tends to be on a smaller level, and so they tend to fly under the radar for longer. Less turnover tends to go through those businesses in the earlier stages, right? What problems do you see those guys falling into, or traps they fall into?
Yeah. So with online arbitrage and retail arbitrage, you're already operating on really small margins, 10%. Some even go as low as 5. I know they target 33%, but that's in a perfect world. But there's a couple of things which can go wrong actually. So firstly, they don't pretend they're VAT registered from the start. So we always tell our clients, pretend you're VAT registered. Pretend from the very start you're VAT registered, because by the time you get to 85k and you're only making 10% margin, that's only 8k profit roughly, and you need to push beyond that threshold to sell. So you want to make sure you're sustainable from day one. And that's why we say you pretend you're VAT registered. And what does that look like? It looks like you just charge as if you were charging VAT. So customers will still buy that product.
Okay, so let's just clarify how this works for Americans listening again. I mean, they will, or possibly Canadians, or I don't know how it works in Australia, but where they have a sort of sales tax type situation. They're used to that. In Europe and UK, which is part of the European Union until about 10 minutes ago and still operates in a similar way, I would say. If you buy something from the shops for, say, £12, whatever that is, $15 or 14.95 euros or something, then that £2 of that normally would go to the government, doesn't it, in VAT ultimately, and £10 goes to the person who sells the product. Is that right? First of all, I'm not going completely nuts here. Good. So it's completely different in America, which it blows my mind that you buy a $10 product and then at the cash register they tell you it's $12. It's the same difference, except that sales tax gets added onto the price that there's advertised, whereas VAT is normally assumed to be included in it, and the consumer doesn't have to worry about whether you're VAT registered or not. That's your problem. So I guess what you're saying then, Ben, so just giving a bit of context for our North American friends who go, what the heck are you talking about? Because VAT blows Americans' minds, just as sales tax blows my tiny mind as a European dweller. So here's what you're saying, if I understand it. If you were going to charge £10 for a product and make, a certain margin on it, you're saying you should charge £12 for it and enjoy pocketing the money that will in future go to the government as VAT. Because if you can't survive with the £12 price, then you're not going to be able to scale it once you hit the VAT red threshold. Is that roughly what you're saying?
That's exactly it. And you don't have to necessarily do it by 20%. You do it by around 10%, because you're going to reclaim some VAT as well. So if you buy an item,
this is where it gets more.
You'll reclaim 20%.
Okay, so you add 10% to the price, is roughly what you're saying. So tell me about this whole how things with reclaiming works. I mean, obviously, I hand stuff to my accountant and I say deal with this. Like a lot of people, I kind of act in that I don't really want to know about this kind of way, which I guess is probably not very responsible. So how do we how should we be looking at the whole reclaiming side of things? Can you just put that in a nutshell for those who are new to it, or kind of like me, just turn a blind eye to it, how it works?
Yeah. So really, you've got this opportunity to reclaim VAT you suffer. So when you buy something from maybe a supplier or a shop or even services, and you're charged VAT because they're themselves VAT registered, you can reclaim that VAT. So that will offset against any VAT you've collected when you make sales to customers. So you really want to maximize the amount you reclaim. And the way you can do that is making sure, firstly, you know what you're buying, and two, you get a VAT receipt. Not everyone is going to charge you VAT. So if you look at Amazon fees, for example, once you're VAT registered in the UK, you're no longer charged VAT on those, but you are charged on the sponsored ads. And it's kind of those kind of little things you need to know, because your accountant's not going to know that unless they are a specialist.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and Amazon kind of mixes it up. It's quite weird. Remind me so Amazon charges you VAT on some things and others. Remind us what those are
So
again.
Amazon, when you start out and you're not VAT registered, they'll charge VAT on FBA fees, selling fees, and the sponsored ads, everything. When you register for VAT and you give them your VAT number, they'll take it off the FBA fees and the selling fees, but leave it on the sponsored ads. So then you can only reclaim off the sponsored ads. So you kind of have to then, I don't know, find someone who knew that to tell you, because again, Amazon never make it clear.
Okay, so if I understand, so once you get VAT registered, Amazon's going to automatically not charge you VAT for the FBA fees and selling fees. They'll deal with the government directly, I guess. Is that right? Is that more or less?
No, they just don't charge it, because it's because when it's a business to business,
yeah,
they just don't charge it. So they just don't charge any VAT.
Okay, so anyway, we don't have to worry about it. Okay, fine. So it's Amazon's problem if they're paying the government or not, but as it turns out, they're not. Okay, worth knowing. But you are charged VAT on the sponsored ads, but you can reclaim that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. That's
okay.
it.
Now that's worth knowing, because sponsored ads is a big percentage of most of our costs. I mean, if you're lucky and you can keep it to 10% of the revenue, then these days, I mean, depending on your product line, it varies wildly, of course, but quite a lot of people are spending in the 10 to 15% of their entire revenue range. So if you're not claiming that VAT back, for say a business doing £1 million pounds a year in revenue, which is not that slow to hit on Amazon right these days, then how much would they be leaving on the table if they spent, say, 10% of their revenue on sponsored ads and they didn't reclaim their VAT? That's a bit of a maths challenge for you.
The maths challenge, so that's 100k spend really. So look, are they're going to be saving around 20k?
Right.
Less than that really.
Yeah. And by the way, just as a reality check, so if you're running if you're running £1 million a year business, if you're doing 20% EBITDA, so pre-tax profit is a nice number, but the reality might be 10%. So that's 100 grand a year. So by saving 20k, you've just increased your profits by 20% without doing anything except employing an accountant for presumably not a big job to do, I imagine, for an accountant. And how much work is that in terms of hours?
Well, it's not big. The issue at the moment is the knowledge, right, and the lack of transparency on the Amazon systems. So, you find that if you go to any accountant and you say, look, on the high street or something, and you say, look, can you just do my accounts? They won't know what to claim for the sponsored ads. They'll just be like, yeah, cool, no idea. Or, they don't know what they don't know. So you might never actually claim it. The interesting thing is that if you're a UK limited company selling in anywhere in the world, really, and you're spending sponsored ads in America, they charge VAT on that as well. So you can claim back, if you're selling in the US, you can claim back 20% on the sponsored ads in the US market.
Okay. And this is when you start, I guess, for the person who knows where to look, it's really easy. It reminds me a little bit, sorry, this is very helpful that my cameras have got a bit of a mind of its own these days. It reminds me of that saying that you've got, third time lucky, right. It reminds me of that saying that there's a guy who goes to a factory and there's a machine that goes tick, 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 tick normally, and when it's working well, and the other goes along and goes tick, tick, tock, tick, tick, clank, and it keeps going wrong. So they phone some expert in, and he comes along with a hammer, listens very carefully, hits it very hard, and it goes tick, 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 and it goes back to working okay. And the owner says, amazing, thank you so much. You've saved us, lost tens of thousands of dollars of lost production per day. And the guy sends his invoice in, and it's for £1,000. And he goes, my God, you just hit it with a hammer. Could you give me a breakdown? And the guy says, hitting with a hammer, £1. knowing where to hit £999. So I
Yeah.
guess what we're saying is, if you know Amazon and if you know VAT, for you, it's a piece of cake to go, oh, well, obviously you claim for this, and it will take you 5 minutes, but it's incredibly valuable for the person. Whereas if you're an accountant who gets VAT but doesn't get Amazon, or you're an Amazon specialist but don't know about VAT, then, for example, I wouldn't be able to just nail this for somebody, so I'm not a VAT person. Then that's an example of the fact that you've just got to get a very specific experts involved, right? I think it's just, you just put it in a nutshell. That's, by the way, a broader lesson for anyone listening. Get really specific experts. Everyone wants a guru to tell them everything. There is no such one person. You need a team of people. You occasionally need a lawyer, but you definitely need expert accountants. End of today's lecture. Okay, so what else can you claim VAT back on then? Let's get as much money back off the government as we can.
So
what can we get?
the other one, so we started off an online arbitrage. So the other one we see a lot is they'll go down to, say, the chemist. I was going to say Boots, but that won't be market specific for you. Was it Walgreens? And they'll buy loads of things, and actually half those goods in the UK are exempt from VAT, for example, and the other half are not. So then how do you know what is and what isn't? And then have you factored that into your margins when you're kind of calculating that on, sell of order, something similar? And then you kind of come unstuck because you think, why am I making profit? Well, actually, because you couldn't claim on that. So there's lots of little things like baby's clothes you can't claim on. Google Ads is outside of the UK, and they're based in Ireland. So Google, Bing, and Facebook, when you're kind of spending on the ads, they don't actually charge you UK VAT, and you can't claim on that. It's a big shock for a lot of the direct-to-consumer people, because that's 40% of their cost, and they can't claim it back.
Wow. So that's, yeah. Again, you just got to know, I suppose what it comes down to is really being very VAT aware. So it was a bit like COVID awareness. It's a disease out there that can get your profits at any moment. And so I suppose we have to be VAT aware on sort of category by category basis. So if you're doing reselling, not just arbitrage, obviously, but I know a lot of business owners, a couple of the guys in my masterminds that have big, £1 million a year, £5 million a year, reselling operations, some are quite big with warehouses of 20 people and stuff. So they really need to know, if I'm buying X type of product from a wholesaler or distributor and I'm reselling it, then that can't have VAT against it. And the other one, we do want to reclaim it. And then the other thing you're saying is marketing channels. So Amazon ads, you can just reclaim it. Google ads, presumably they didn't charge you VAT in the first place, but you can't reclaim it. Is that right? That's two sides of the same coin. Okay.
People think I'm VAT registered, boom, I'm going to save all my ads. And then I have to tell them they don't charge VAT, they do reverse charge. And I'm not going to explain what reverse charge is on here, but it's basically zero VAT.
Yeah. Okay. Reverse charge. Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like very technical.
It's ridiculous taxing, but in effect, it's zero VAT. Just don't. Okay. That's all you need to know.
Wow. Okay. So where do we go from here? When people get to this point, that sounds all a bit confusing. Obviously, one of the first things you're probably going to do is reach out to an expert. So we ought to get your sort of pitch in for your services, because clearly you know what you're talking about. And I'm already getting information that I didn't know. And, I probably should know better, but I've buried my head in the sand about it. So, yeah, what do you do for people, first of all? And then we ought to dig a bit more into, if people want to DIY it, how they can do this.
Yeah. So what we do is we're a UK-based accountancy firm. And what we do is we focus just on e-commerce sellers. So that's Amazon, Etsy, eBay, Shopify. And we try and eat all of that horrible admin stuff. So we kind of help you with your bookkeeping. We do all your VAT for UK, but also European entities as well. So if you're registered in Germany and things like that, we'll do the VAT for that. And the idea is that you don't have to think about that stuff. So you can focus on, return on investment and advertising costs. So anyone who kind of operates in that space can come to us, and we will kind of be there to kind of take all that horrible stuff away.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, that's more or less how I treat my accountants, which is probably why I'm more ignorant about this stuff than I should be at this stage. The other question is just the nitty gritty but important ones. What kind of software can you deal with? Does it have to be on QuickBooks? Does it have to be on Xero, for example? I know that I've experienced more than once having to move accounting software packages because of moving accountants. How do you guys deal with that?
So there's loads of accountancy products out there, and like Free Agent, Wave, QuickBooks, Xero. we really just operate with the ones which will help, which actually connect into Amazon. So there's some tools out there which connect in, and the best APIs out there are QuickBooks and Xero. So we really focus on those, and we say, look, you can choose one of them, jump on one of those, and we'll kind of go from there. They're kind of like the Amazon, not the Amazon, the kind of iPhone and Android of the accountancy world. So
Yeah,
they've got all the
absolutely.
apps.
To be honest, I don't know many people. I know somebody who's doing Sage accounting, but I think how early stage they are really. I've got one client who's doing that, but I think most people tend to be QuickBooks or Xero, and that's because you can use software like A2X, or to be honest, and this a couple of friends of mine who developed Link My Books is way
Yep.
better if you're dealing with VAT. In my experience, and they kind of developed it because they're both UK, well, from the UK. Dan, Swedish Dan, lives in Sweden, and Pete now lives in Australia. But I used to go and hang out with them in sort of various meetings for sort of power sellers in the UK. But the is it, do you think, still the best sort of linking software, Link My Books, for
So
those two, or what's your view on?
I would say the DIY aspect. I mean, you were touching on that, and I think if you're DIYing, use Link My Books. If you're in the UK, and I think if you're elsewhere, use A2X. But it's really good for DIYers because it kind of does it for you. Where it may fall down is when you try and give it to an accountant to look at, and they're like, "I've no idea what you've just done here," because it's not in accountancy speak. What we want to see is like a sales ledger and all set out nicely. So it's really good for DIYers, and if you're doing it by yourself, use it because it will probably save you more than not using it. But we still focus on trying to get whole reports out of Amazon to kind of make sure we've got a full reconciled data set. So you just
That
mute again.
reconciled data set then would be better served by A2X going into QuickBooks or Xero, and then hand it to an accountant. Is that right?
No, we want the raw report, and
Okay,
we
so you
will
don't want
then
these linking things at all
no,
then.
because we'll have to
Got you.
check it anyway.
Okay,
We're
right. So
accountants,
forget.
we have to check everything. So we'd have to check it, which we have to download the report anyway. So I think definitely Link My Books is great. And especially if you're using a traditional accountant who doesn't understand Amazon, use Link My Books. If you're
Yeah.
using like a specialist e-commerce account like us,
Hmm.
we want to see that raw data because we absolutely understand it.
Okay, that's really precise guidance. Thank you for that. So let me summarize then. So use QuickBooks or Xero. Most people do, but if you're not, you're probably kind of asking for. I don't think I know a few specialist accountants who deal with Amazon, and I don't think any. They're mostly either QuickBooks or Xero, not both. Not random stuff. And mostly not both, by the way. So the fact that you can deal with either is a real plus, I have to say, because I'm a bit tired of switching between accounting packages, and I've done that more than once. A bit of a mare. So if you're DIYing, use Quick Link My Books. If you're in the UK, especially if your accountant's kind of an amateur in e-commerce, I mean, hopefully they're
Yeah.
professional in VAT, but you guys just want to go straight into it. So in other words, if for you it's irrelevant if you go A2X or Link My Books, you'll go, yeah, forget that. I want to go straight to the source on Amazon, or you're going to look at QuickBooks, right? How do you deal with that
Yeah, we
situation?
want to go straight to Amazon and then we're going to compare it to what you've been paid. And it's kind of what Link My Books is doing. But for us to be 100%, it's not Mr. Settlement or they've got the complete data. We want to download all of it and then kind of play around with it. Because the risk is if you link My Books and it's kind of, it goes 3 months back and then you need to manually do something. And then that's the point where it falls down.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the situation more than once. I've come across that with people where Amazon reports will only go back so long, and then I think it's 18 months or something in many cases, right? Then you've got the nightmare that if you're relying on just things automatically syncing up, it
Mm.
works to a point, and then you really need the data. And if you haven't been keeping on top of getting the data yourself, or having somebody like you do it, then you can lose data and you just ain't got it, and which is kind of frightening. So if you've been in business for more than 18 months on Amazon, folks, download your reports. And of
Yeah.
course, you don't know which ones to download because there are frightening. I mean, at least you're not dealing with fulfillment. The fulfillment side's got crazy numbers of reports. I mean, the
Yeah.
the accounting side is simply confusing rather than overwhelming, right? So this is where you guys could do it. So this is great stuff. I mean, I just think I was about to ask you how would DIY this stuff. I think we've given people enough hints with some simple wins. Other than that, I just honestly my best advice would be, even if you don't work with Ben, and obviously I think you probably should consider it because he clearly knows his business, you should work with an accountant, full stop. Don't
Yeah.
DIY your accountants, folks, unless you happen to be an accountant. Even if you are, I've got an accountant in the mastermind, a very, very clever guy, deals with very big loans and very smart, but he has an accountant to do his stuff for him. Because he wants to focus on growing the business. So even if you are an accountant, you might want to hire an e-commerce specialist. So if people want to work with you, then how do they how do you kick that relationship off?
Yes, fine. So the best thing to do is go through our website and then book. We offer free consultations for half an hour. So it's, kind of like this. You kind of get this on a one-to-one basis. We don't pull our punches, and like you can either sign up or you can just take the information, think thanks, I don't need an account right now, but thanks for the information, and then we can kind of go from there. We've got really clear pricing, and I'm sure we'll have a link somewhere for the website.
Yeah, we'll just go amazingfba.com / what should we call it, VAT consult. Is that a good an accurate sort of thing?
Yeah, or e-commerce
accountant
accountant or something like that. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, well, let's call it VAT consult. I mean, it depends. You can always go to 10kcollective.com or just email me, right? If you're listening and you think, I want to get hold of Ben, but I don't remember the URL, amazingfba.com / VAT consult. Or you can email me, Michael, Michael, at amazingfba.com. Or you can go to yourecommerceaccountant.co.uk. There you go. Some multiple ways to reach you. And then I believe you've got a guide coming out from how to claim back VAT from Amazon if you're not VAT registered yet. So how does that work?
So yeah, we've actually already got that out, and so I can send you the link after. But what it is like, if you're a business in the UK, I think in Europe as well, but I'm just gonna speak for the UK, and you've been selling on Amazon, you're not VAT registered, you can actually email Amazon, raise a case and say, look, I'm a business, you actually shouldn't be charging me VAT at all on FBA fees and selling fees. And you can just raise that case, I'll stop charging you that, and you won't even have to be VAT registered. So it's absolutely worth having a look at that article and seeing if you can save. Some people have saved quite a bit of money doing that.
Yeah, so let's call it I was about to say amazingfba.com / VAT cheat, but that sounds like I'm encouraging people to cheat.
Don't do that. Yeah, you'll hate you.
So then I don't want to sort of give a name that's the wrong. So VAT sheet. So amazingfba.com / VAT sheet, and we'll set up a link there so people can sign up and grab that cheat sheet. So that sounds really, really worth having for the earlier stage entrepreneurs. And by the way, you could be a big, wearing a big boy pants and doing $10 million a year on Amazon in the US, and you might want to test out the UK, and there's no necessity to get VAT registered immediately. Why would you? If you don't have to, form a UK limited company, have your company own that. I mean, you might want to get a lawyer involved there because that's international kind of company ownership, but the basics of it, the mechanics of it are fairly straightforward. Talk to someone like Ben to make sure you've got this side of the pond covered. And then, you can get up to £85,000 or $100,000 plus to try it out. And if it doesn't work, you just shut the thing down. You haven't VAT registered. You haven't had to pay VAT. You don't have to reclaim it. Simples. So I would definitely be checking that out if you're a bigger company that wants to expand. And if you're less likely if you're based in Germany and wanting to expand to UK, likewise. So this is great stuff. I really like the fact that you've given us some real easy wins in the sense of don't do this and you'll save yourself a ton of money and hassle, which is great. Anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
So I think the only thing which you've kind of left here is that there is the biggest mistake we actually see, and this is from accounts as well, is when you get settled out of Amazon, it's net of fees. So you'll have to say 10 grand in sales, and you'll have around, sometimes 4 to 8K in Amazon fees and sponsored ads. And accounts apply 20% to that, and that'd be incorrect. That'd be under reporting VAT. And if you had any kind of VAT audit, they would sting you on that. And I think you'd even actually miss your kind of VAT threshold. So if your accountant is kind of looking at just your settlements and going, oh, he's only made 20 grand. Well, actually, he's made 100 and he needs to register for VAT. You don't know that until you split that kind of that settlement out into sales and costs.
So just to be ultra clear, because this sounds like even I wouldn't make this error, and it's amazing that an accountant would make this, which goes to show that an accountant is not just an accountant; they need to understand e-com, right, and
Yeah.
specifically Amazon. So you're saying that the settlement, meaning the payout that you get from Amazon, that they wouldn't know that that is net of the Amazon fees, and indeed, if you've set it up that way, of the Amazon ad costs as well, right?
No, they would assume it's kind of like a normal business where they kind of boom,
Give you
I put my
everything.
card in, I get money out, and
Yeah.
that's where they fall
Yeah,
over.
that could be a real disaster, couldn't it? Because
Mm.
I can imagine that your payout from Amazon might well be something like 50% or even 40% of your revenue,
Yeah.
at best, depending on how it's set up. So, yes, that would be a bit of a disaster. Okay, thank you for flagging that up. Again, reasons why you want to hire somebody who's a specialist, folks. So that's why I got Ben on. So, Ben, thank you so much for coming in and sharing some really simple wins and in the arena of tax. And the word simple and tax don't normally go together. So that's pretty cool. Thank you for that. And also, again, I just want to urge anyone listening, whether you work with Ben or somebody else, and it's worth at least a conversation with an accountant. At the very least, I'd urge you to do that. Do I have my sort of underhand affiliate hat on? Kind of, but I mean, really, I'd rather get an email from you saying, "Thank God you put me onto Ben, Mike, because you just saved us $20,000 in an unnecessary VAT or whatever." I'm like, that's a big win. But whoever you work with, please get an accountant. It pains me when I see people running businesses without accountants because they're just, even if they haven't hit the trouble yet, they're going to. So please get an accountant and preferably get one who understands your business model. End of lecture, but Ben, really important to get you on. I'm getting a lot of accountants on over time, and I make no apology for that because grown up business people know that a lot of the devil's in the detail of the financial side. So thank you so much for sorting it out. And if you want to get hold of you, once again, amazingfba.com/VAT sheet to know how to claim back money from Amazon if you're not VAT registered. And if you want to call Ben, just go to amazingfba.com/VAT consult and you can get a VAT consult. Surprise, surprise. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. Great to have you.
Brilliant. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Okay, that's our podcast done, folks. So I don't see any questions or comments on the live unless I'm missing them. But if you have any questions afterwards, because I know a lot of people watch the replay of these videos, then please do pop them in, and Ben or I will come back to you and give you some thoughts. And obviously, we'll try and get Ben to comment on this as well. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to have you on with us live today on 10K Collect.